that handy? Okay, it says the meeting is now live streamed on YouTube. Okay. Okay. All right, I'm going to give folks just another minute. And the advantage that you all who have logged in early or on time will have is that you can get started and have the full 30 minutes. Those who log in late, they will not have the full 30 minutes to work on the quiz. Uh, I'll give it a few more minutes. So again, look at your macromolecule uh, page. Again, while we're waiting on them, I'll review just a few points on that. Some of you had put something in the box. The box that was blacked out for a reason because there is no food for nucleic acids. Nucleic acids are genetic molecules. So you shouldn't have anything in that box that says examples of food. Um, what you should have is, as far as ratio is concerned, they are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, as they have in the front. But what you want to say as far as arrangement is concerned, you could say DNA and RNA. So if that's not what you have on your chart, go ahead and add. I know you've already submitted your chart, some of you, but make sure you put that under elements involved. DNA and RNA are the function and importance they carry, the hereditary molecules, hereditary information. The monomer is a nucleotide, and the nucleotide is made up of one sugar, one phosphate, and one base. But there are 4 different kinds of bases, which makes each nucleotide different. And under polymers, you should have long chains of nucleotides. So, and I say that because looking at the ones that are submitted, that's not how um, you set it up. So if you lost any points on that, that might have been where you lost it under nucleotides. Okay, and again, on proteins, some people did not say polypeptides or long chains of amino acids. That would have been fine. Some people said proteins, and proteins are long chains of amino acids, so I accepted that. Um, and I think everything else was good. Okay, so mostly I ran into people trying to put something in that box that was blacked out, and you need to understand it was blacked out for a reason. All right, so I've got 8 of you in class. I'm going to go ahead and let's start that quiz. So again, have your macromolecule chart handy. Um, you do need a code to get into the quiz, so I'll type that in the chat in just a second. Let me just make sure that everybody's where they need to be. So you should be in Canvas. If you go to Canvas, right after the macromolecule review, you should have biochemistry, biology 1. Click on your student version so that it looks, all right. So when you take the quiz, let me type the code in the chat. And again, I remind everybody that they should be on camera and I shouldn't be looking at the ceiling. Now this is case sensitive, so you do have to type it just as you see it in the chat. So it is a capital C, lowercase v, capital H, lowercase h, 1, 2, 3. All right, so once you get here, go ahead and start that. It's only going to give you 30 minutes from the time you start to complete the test. All right, so go ahead and get started on that. So I'm looking at, it's 12:30. So at 1 o'clock, we'll stop. And then if you finish early, go on to the next section. The next section is going to be about cells. So not, oops, okay. Let me come out and go module. So when you finish the test, you might want to come out and, oh, Okay, let me stop student view because it's not showing published. Okay, and it should be published. I see. Okay, got it. All right, so you should see cell structure and transport overview. Look at that. And again, it's a long list of vocabulary words, long list of, if you finish the quiz early, look that over, and then we'll talk about the video and other things. But look at the vocabulary when you're done. Anybody having any trouble getting into the quiz? Again, if you finish early, look at the vocabulary list, and it's quite lengthy for cells. And if it's not showing, refresh your page because I did publish it just now. Cell structure and transport overview. That's what you should be looking when you finish the quiz. Don't watch the video, just look at the vocabulary. All right, Michaela there in the middle of taking a quiz. If you log in, the um, code for the quiz is in the chat. but you only have a few minutes because it was time. We were supposed to be finished by 1 o'clock. Okay, so log in, start the quiz. Again, the code is in the chat. It's case sensitive, capital C, small v, capital H, small s. And do your best to finish by 1 o'clock. It's going to time out after 30 minutes, but try to finish by 1 o'clock. Yes. Michaela, did you have a question? You okay? I'll put it back in here. And again, if you are done, please look at the vocabulary on the next page. Okay, looking over the test, I see two questions that everybody got wrong that were wrong. The answers that they gave you were wrong. Um, Michaela, you almost done? I do want to adjust this a little bit. And actually, I'm just gonna make sure that I'm adjusting this. Give me 1 minute to kind of go scroll through everybody's tests. Yeah, that one. Okay. Yep. Next. Okay. And being as everybody is mostly here, we're only missing two people. Um, I do want to go over the answers to this, and I am probably adjusting everybody's test by 2 points because I'm looking at two questions that they marked wrong, and they had the wrong answer. You had the right answer. So give me 1 second to do that. All right, I won't do it right now, but I will do it in a few. All right, but I'll tell you now which two questions those were. Um, and I'm not sure what to say what number because I think your questions are scrambled. But one of the questions asked you um, which of the following is not a monomer, and all of you correctly picked protein, and that's a right answer. But they, for some reason, had amino acid marked as the correct answer, so they marked you wrong. So I have to adjust that question for you. The other question that I noticed they marked wrong, and you all had the right answer, was this is which of the following would be a way that an enzyme can be denatured? And you all picked neither optimum temperature nor pH. And that is the correct, because you either it's not the right temperature or it's not the right pH. Those are the right answers for that question. And they had something else marked as the right answer. So I will adjust those two questions for everybody. Okay, so everybody just got 2 more points added to theirs. Okay, and I'll leave it at that. Michaela, please try to hurry and finish. I am going to go on with the lesson though. Okay, so everybody should be on. So that should make everybody happy because most of you got like 11. And so if I add two, that means you only got one wrong. So that's so good job. Good job. And so now we want to look at, and I'll start sharing. All right, so we're starting a new unit. All right, LaCoria, did I lose you? Yeah, I did. All right, LaCoria, you having computer issues? Okay, you're back. All right. Um, so let's look at everybody should be looking. I'll share. So give me 1 second to do that. All right, so everybody should be here. And we are going to start the unit on cells. So we looked at macromolecules, and those were molecules as individual structures, but they all get put together into a whole functional unit called the cell. So those macromolecules will be parts of the cell, which is, as we're going to define it, is our basic building block for all living things. So that's the definition you need to remember, that the cell is the basic unit of structure and function for all living things. And what they mean by that is, if you're looking at building blocks for structure, it is the smallest unit that is a living thing. You can break that. If you break up a cell, it's made up of all the things that we talked about, but that's not a living thing. As a functional living thing, the cell is the basic unit of structure. Um, and function. Everything in our bodies, our plants, they function because the cell functions properly. Okay. All right. So they give you a little introduction at the top. It says for my compartments, C is for compartments. So when Robert Hooke looked under the microscope, he was actually looking at a cork. So if you like when you take the cork out of a bottle, um, he took a thin slice of the cork and he looked at that, and all he saw was a bunch of little boxes. So he called those cells because they look like prison cells. So C is for compartment. E is for everything, for being every organism's building block. So again, that's what I was saying earlier. L is for the life processes carried out. So that's when I said structure and function. All things function with the cell. And L is for little factories for protein. So as we look inside of the many parts, one of those little factories makes proteins. Okay. All right. Let's look at the video. Okay, I'm gonna pause it right there. All right. This part you do have to know. So somehow you need to write it down, put it in your notes. You need to know what it is. So again, they went through all the scientists, and I really don't like videos that don't talk to you. So hopefully you were reading the captions as they went through. But they introduced Robert Hooke. So as I told you, he was looking at cork cells. And the problem with cork cells is cork is dead. Okay, so what he was looking at was empty boxes. And um, so while he is credited with naming it the cell, he was actually looking at what was left over from plant cells. The living part had already died and gone away. So he was looking at little square box, rectangular boxes under the microscope. Then you came along with the other gentleman with Anton von Leeuwenhoek. And he actually looked at living cells. So he looked at things that actually had living structures inside. And he also is credited for saying we don't have cells don't just pop up out of the sky. Okay, they come from pre-existing cells. Cells make cells. Okay. Um, so they don't just organize themselves together to create a cell. Another cell reproduces another cell. And I think earlier in the year we talked about one of the functions of living things is they reproduce. And so that's what cells do. So that's what he's credited for. Then we have the next two gentlemen, Schleiden and Schwann, and one was a botanist, so he studied plants, and the other was a zoologist, and he studied animals. And both of them came up with the same conclusion that all the plants are made of cells as a basic building block, and all animals are made of cells. And so they just put those two discoveries together and came up with the fact that all living things have a structural functioning unit called the cell. Um, are made of the same compounds. The cells that carry the information for DNA, and all energy flow occurs within the cell. So basically, what this is saying is if your cells don't work, you stop working properly also. All right. All right. So make sure that somewhere along the way you need to know the step because that's test questions ask you, which is not a part of the cell theory. All right. So when we started off, and it's going to repeat itself in a little while. All right. So all living things have and we're going to look at the cell itself. And this is something all cells composed of. They have a cell membrane, and sometimes it's called a plasma membrane. Inside, so that's like the little envelope around the cell. Inside, we have a jelly-like structure called cytoplasm. And then and inside that you have a nucleus which contains the DNA, and then that little factory that they talked about earlier um, is where the ribosome is the factory that makes the proteins. So all cells have those because all cells have to make proteins. They all have to have instructions to make the protein. So that's where the DNA comes in. Okay. All right, so then they asked you to read through these notes. I'm gonna give you a few minutes to do that. So just take this and just keep flipping through each of these, and then I'll give you a chance to read it for yourself, and then I will come back and talk about those. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute because I want to check on something, and I'll be right back. Okay, I just realized I skipped a page. I was on the second page, and we want to go back to the page. There was a video on the page with the vocabulary, so I'll go back to that one. Like I said, that was just the video, and then the list of vocabulary words. So let's go back and look at that. Hopefully she'll talk to you and not. Nope. Okay. All right. So again, um, so just going back to the preview molecule module, it basically lays out the order of things that we're going to discuss. Uh, what we just did on the other part was our introduction to cells. So starting with what is a cell and who's responsible for discovering it. And like all things in science, as we go through biology, you're going to find out there's the father of this and the father of that. And that's just the people who we credit as being responsible for discovering what each activity is. So when we talk about genetics, we're going to talk about the father of genetics, and we're going to talk about people who discovered different activities as far as DNA is concerned, and so on. Okay. All right. So again, make sure that at some point that you are studying these vocabulary words, we will actually use these. Most of these are parts of the cell. So as we study the cell itself, and the cell is going to have a lot of parts, and you're going to have to know the picture of a cell and be able to label the parts of a cell if you're given a picture. Um, so make sure that you take time to read through this list and become familiar with the ones, especially the ones that are parts of the cell. Some of these other ones are activities that the cell does. So we'll talk about those as we come to them. All right, one of the important things that it mentioned in the little brief video there was the fact that cells are microscopic. Okay, we cannot see cells with the naked eye. Okay. All right, so they are coming back to this one. They are microscopic, okay? Um, which means unless you put it under the microscope, you can't see them. It says they interact with the environment and transport nutrients and get rid of waste. So you're going to find that the same way our whole body has to take in oxygen, it has to take in food, it has to get rid of waste. The cell has to do that too. Okay, so all of your cells have to function just like your whole organism functions. All right. The surface area. This is select the cube to learn. Okay, so let's click on. All right. So the more surface, in other words, this cube is very big, but the surface area that is exposed is large on the top. It's larger than the one on the bottom. So that means it can take in more things because the area that's exposed to the environment is bigger. The smaller the area that's exposed to the environment, the less small things that it can take in. So surface area ratio is important for cell in order to exchange food and gases. All right, when we talk about that, there are organisms that are only one cell big, and we call those unicellular organisms. So remember that uni means one, and they are by themselves a whole functioning organism. They are not connected to any other cells. And those are usually the bacteria and amoeba. And we'll talk about those some more later. Multicellular organisms like us, we are made up of many cells, okay? Many cells connected, and each cell has a function. Like we have heart cells that have a particular function, lung cells have a particular function, and they work together to make the whole organism work properly. Okay, these are two words that you have to become familiar with. So write those down as far as your vocabulary is concerned. Prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Okay. Eukaryote cells are classified as either plants or animals, and prokaryotes do not have a nucleus. Now, we're going to, like I said, study this cell enlarged, and we're going to look at all the parts of the cell. But if you look to the picture, let me see if it goes like, okay, it makes it bigger. So the prokaryote is very simplified. It just has nuclear material inside, but it's not encased in a nucleus. So it's just kind of free floating inside the cytoplasm. Okay, so what defines it as a prokaryote is that there is no nucleus. There's DNA or RNA, but there is no nucleus. Okay. Then we have our eukaryote. And our eukaryote, as you see, has many cell parts, but specifically, it has a nucleus, and in that nucleus, that's where the DNA or the genetic material is stored. It's not free floating around in the cytoplasm. It is encased in a membrane of its own, and it is where the DNA is found. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so almost everything else, plants, animals, protists, fungi, they're all eukaryotics. Okay, so two types of cells, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. The difference is one has a nucleus, the other does not. But going back up here to this list of all living things, they all have a cell membrane, they all have cytoplasm, they all have DNA, and they all have ribosomes. Okay, so and as we go on, we're going to be looking at this one has this and the other one doesn't have um, the other. All right, let's look at this last video before we go.
All vertebrates start the same way, as one fertilized egg cell. The egg will divide and form new cells. These divide to form more cells. At first, an embryo's development seems chaotic. It soon begins taking on exquisite order. Fields of cells fold and slide over each other. These cells are gathering in a long line and rolling into a tube. This is the beginning of a spinal cord. Cell differentiation has taken place. Other cells are becoming heart cells and are forming a primitive beating heart. Each cell is ordered by a genetic program to form organs, limbs, tissue, to construct a body plan. At these early stages of embryonic development, it's hard to tell whether this is a chick, a frog, or a human being. Ear bumps on the limb develop into feathers, and as the chick outgrows its space and food supply, it is time to hatch.
Okay, that probably out of place, but that's showing you the organization of life. So it starts with a cell, you get more cells, make more cells, but then she used the term differentiate, which means they become different types of cells depending on what the DNA has told them that their function should be. All right, so before you go, let's try to click and drag these words to where they belong. All right, so hopefully you said that if it lacks a nucleus, oops, why won't you stay? Okay. Huh. My pro my prokaryote won't stay. That's not right. Is yours staying? Mine isn't staying. But a cell that lacks a nucleus is a prokaryote. If it's composed of more than one cell, it's multicellular. So I don't know. Oh, there it is. It stayed that time. It didn't stay the last time. But for some reason, my prokaryote won't stay. But that's where it goes. And it should be two, it should be 3 out of 3 because that one should stay put. All right. So look over the summary. And when next time we come, we're actually going to look at the parts of a cell. Okay. All right. So good job. All of you did really good on the quiz. And I've already adjusted the points. So I'll have a good weekend and I'll see you next week.